Okay, next we need to cover how to deal with working with sheets. So you can see at the moment in this spreadsheet at the bottom of the screen, we've got sheet 1. Now I can rename that sheet by double clicking on the name and typing in my sheet, or whatever name you want to give that sheet. You can also right click on the sheet name and give the tab a color. So you can make that tab any color you want. And if you've got lots of sheets within your workbook, that can be quite a useful thing to do to tell them apart. Now you can see this little plus icon here at the bottom of the screen. If I click that, that's going to add in a new sheet into the workbook. And that sheet is going to be a completely blank canvas compared to sheet 1. So just to illustrate that, if I write hello into cell A1 here, and then I click into sheet 2, you can see that hello isn't there. So they're completely separate. But as you will see later in this course, you can actually reference between the two sheets. So they are sort of living together side by side, but the data in each sheet is separate. So I'm going to rename this as my data, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to change that to green. The next thing to be aware with sheets is that you can also hide them. Just like you can hide rows and columns, you can hide sheets. So if I click hide now, you'll see that we can only see one sheet in this workbook, but we know there are actually two. So if I right click here, you can click unhide, you can see that there's a sheet there called my data. Now that's actually a really useful function in Excel, because often if you create something like a report and you give that report onto somebody else, you don't want anybody to be able to play around with the raw data in that report. You might want to protect certain elements of the report that's only for you to use. So you could hide that sheet before you actually go and send it to somebody, and then when you need to make an amendment to it yourself, you know you can just unhide it and make the changes that you need to make. Also in this right hand click menu is the delete option, which will remove the sheet and everything that's on it from the entire workbook, and rename, which is the same as just double clicking on the name and moving or copying them. So if I take my sheet here as an example, which has got the word hello on it, if I right click on that and go move or copy, I can do one of a few things here. So if I click create a copy and click OK, it will create an exact carbon copy of what was in my sheet, but it calls it my sheet 2, and I can rename that as my sheet copy or something like that. The other thing you can do is what's known as moving, which basically moves the sheet to an entirely new workbook or an entirely new Excel file. So if I click move or copy here, and I click in this drop down list just here, and I click new book, I'm going to click OK. Now notice I've not clicked on the create a copy here, so what it's going to do, it's going to take my sheet and it's going to create an entirely new workbook where my sheet is the only sheet in that workbook. And you can see it's done it there. So that's basically how to use sheets. It's very unlikely that you will get to the limit of how many sheets you can have in Excel. One piece of advice I would give would be to try not to have too many sheets in one workbook in Excel. And more than 4 or 5 kind of makes it a little bit difficult for people to navigate between them.